Moderate Democrats are finding themselves not only in a battle with the GOP, but also with hard-charging liberals in their own party. Radicals, it comes as some outspoken freshman Democrats are creating tension with party leaders and as the power of the far-left progressive wing continues to grow. What does this mean for the future of the Democratic Party? Joining me right now is Utah Democratic Congressman Ben McAdams, member of both the Blue Dog Coalition and the House Financial Services Committee. And Congressman, it's good to have you on the program this morning.
Great to be on with you,
Thank you so much for joining us. You were one of 15 House Dems to not support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. I want to make that clear because you have been one of the Democrats to push back on some of these pie-in-the-sky ideas. How is it going with that?
You know, I think that with the election of the Democrats taking control of the House, the caucus actually moved to the center. Now, you wouldn't get that sense watching the media coverage, but because some of the more progressive members are far more outspoken. But we elected a lot of progressives. The Blue Dog Coalition doubled in size. The largest caucus in the Congress is the New Democrats. They're a group of moderates as well.
Right.
And I think that really is the center of gravity of the Democrats in Congress.
You wouldn't get that from the media. You also wouldn't get that from watching Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This morning she's at the Texas conference, South by Southwest, and she said that the current situation in America is garbage and that her ideas are 10% better, and what's wrong with 10% better than garbage?
You know, I think that's, we are the greatest country in the world. We have a capitalist system that has created opportunity, cured diseases, created a middle class. And, you know, certainly there have been failures of capitalism, but we shouldn't be throwing out a system that has made us the greatest country in the world. Let's look to fix some of the, you know, people who have been left behind in the capitalist system. But let's fix it and let's move forward. We are a great country.
But
and to throw that out is, yeah.
I don't hear any of your colleagues really pushing back. I mean, most of the Democratic candidates right now who are running for president in 2020 say that they agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green Deal. We just had a doctor and an expert on climate change, Senator Barrasso, on the program, who said it doesn't make any sense. You also have Nancy Pelosi yesterday really unwilling or unable to denounce Congressman Omar's anti-Semitism. Why?
You know, I think we had just elected the most diverse Congress in history,
right,
and with diversity
that, yeah.
comes, yeah, with that diversity comes a diversity of opinions, and I think we've got to be willing to embrace all of those opinions. That includes the center, and so you know, my voice isn't going to be quieted by people who are pushing a more liberal agenda. I was elected by a very moderate district. It's who I am, and that's the district that I'm going to represent.
And frankly, I think that's where much of America is. I mean, most people are hanging out in the middle. You might lean to the right on some issues, you might lean to the left on other issues, but is your voice really being heard by your party? Because it seems like every day we're debating Bernie Sanders' $32 trillion bet on Medicare for all, or Alexandria Ocasio's $93 trillion bet on a new Green Deal, or Elizabeth Warren's tax on wealth, or Kamala Harris's tax on income.
Yeah, I think there are clearly some radical ideas that, at the end of the day, I think we need to focus on what we can agree on, and that's Republicans, Democrats, moderates, left and center, and right. And that is, I think we want to transition to a clean energy economy. We want to expand health care coverage and control the costs. And then let's have a debate about what's the best way to do that. But to stake out a radical agenda and then not allow other voices to come to the table, I think is losing the diversity, the strength of the diversity that we have. And so I'm, you know, as a mayor, former mayor in a very red state, one of the things that I found was that reaching across the aisle, listening to people, Republicans and who saw things differently but were trying to accomplish the same goal, we could actually make our ideas better by listening and then actually get stuff done instead of just advocating for positions that would have very slim likelihood of ever becoming law. Reaching across the aisle and taking a pragmatic view to things, you can actually, you know, I have real-world experience lifting people out of poverty, helping people overcome addiction, get out of the criminal justice system, right. Creating jobs, and we do that by working in a collaborative, bipartisan fashion.
Well, you've got to speak to the other people in the room, and we'll be watching that. I'm certainly going to be hoping that you'll come back and we'll talk more about some of your priorities because they seem to differ from some of the radicals on the left. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much for stopping by this morning.
When I spoke to Ivanka Trump last week, much of our conversation focused on jobs and reskilling the American workforce. But the other important part of her policy agenda is focused on families. Watch.
these policies are working, and they're working for the people whose jobs were the most vulnerable. And those are the people we're trying to help. We're also trying to help them through our working family agenda by recognizing the realities of modern working families, the enormous cost of childcare for those families, and the necessity of childcare to families who need two incomes, or of course for single parents. And then of course the importance for children of childcare, early childhood education, because they're really one and the same.
So there's a lot of substance here. I mean, let's just put up some of the elements of Ivanka Trump's pro-family agenda. You know, boosting childcare, doubling the child tax credit. She's pushing for paid parental leave. And I just want to show you how important family is. One of the central points in Ivanka's message last week was upward mobility. Now, just look at this data, which analyzes social mobility by family stability. So if you look at that one, that is a really important emphasis on the benefits of marriage. If you look there at the way that marriage rates keep parents together, depending on whether they're cohabiting or whether they're married, it's a huge, huge factor. Look at that, 74% of married parents stay together compared to 24% for couples who are cohabiting. And if you look at the data on who is rising up the income scale, it turns out that someone born in the bottom 20% of the income distribution, if their parents are not married, then they're going to be much more likely to stay there. 50% stay there. It's a huge, huge difference compared to people who are born in a family with a stable parental background. So family policy is not some soft, separate thing from jobs and economic policy. It's right at the heart of it. And it is fantastic to see the Trump administration recognize that in such a substantive way. Now, joining us, as well as our colleagues around the table to discuss all this, executive editor of The Federalist and research fellow for the Heartland Institute, Joy Pullman. Joy, I have to be honest, you were just introduced to me by Tucker Carlson, and since then I've been voraciously consuming everything you've been writing, and I love it. There's one particular thing I really want to hear from you about, which is a piece you wrote about how you can combine what mothers want to do, which is to be there for their children, but also meet their desire to be in the workforce through much more flexible working arrangements. Talk about that for a second.
Sure. Well, I have found, particularly in my own life, as I've had children, and I have 5, it's been a wonderful, wonderful blessing to find employers who are flexible and willing to work with me because they value my skills as a worker as well as me as a whole person. And I'm a mother, and so I'm really committed to my children and to spending a large portion of my day with my small children. I have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 2 older school-age kids. So I know that they really need me to be there with them to have an optimal development. So my employers have allowed me flexible work. I work nights, I work weekends, I work a couple hours a week with a babysitter, and that's really allowed me to do 2 things that I love at the same time. And I think a lot more employers should be thinking about that. When we hear that they're trying to attract women, they sometimes focus on kind of weird things like freezing their eggs that can have damage to women's bodies. And I also think it damages the cultural conversation because it doesn't say to women, we value you as you are, and women make babies, and that's okay, and we love that because it's good for society. So I think there's pro-family and pro-women ways of arranging work, and there's anti-family and anti-women ways of arranging work, and of course we should support the former.
And Sarah, we just, I mean, to follow on from that, we just saw Elizabeth Warren, I think, although I praised her tech policy earlier, I think she had a policy on childcare that sounded not at all what the direction we should be moving in.
Yeah, and that certainly is the debate. I mean, I think Joy brings up something that's dear to my heart. I have a very flexible schedule now. We have children, you know, we have 6 children from older to younger, and we have to take care of, you know, managing them and managing it as a mom. And I have a flexible schedule because I've chosen at this point in my career to kind of go independent, and I work here with Fox as a contributor, and I do my writing. But when I think about this debate on the scale of, like, for women all across the country, I mean, I'm also thinking realistically. I spoke to you earlier, you know, and we were talking about my mother. And after my father passed away, she became a single mom and ended up working. You know, she did not have a college degree. She worked in a factory for a while, and you know, putting airplane parts together. But I remember how difficult it was trying to find that time to balance, you know, the children, trying to find the right job to balance both us, my brother and I, as well as you know, her job and bringing money and supporting us so that we would have a life, right? So I think what Joy is saying is so true. We're at a new level in our society where we have to start honoring women, as well as what we could do to move them forward in the workforce by honoring who we are and our bodies and the ability to have children. But we also have to look at other issues, I think. And I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren's, you know, plans on using the federal government
what's interesting,
to provide...
sorry to cut you off, Henry, but I just think in the... sorry, Sarah, but Henry, I'd like your sort of broader political take on this, because what Ivanka Trump is working, that agenda there, childcare, child tax credit, paid parental leave, this is not traditional Republican conservative policy. On the other hand, I would say it is positive populism.
Yeah, well, I think it's exactly the sort of thing that families talk about around the dinner table, and it's the sort of thing Republicans have been afraid to talk about, and they need to talk about. You know, if you're talking about blue-collar families who voted for Trump for the first Republican, a lot of them need that flexibility or could benefit from more child tax credits than the way that she wants. I think both talking to moderate educated moms, but also blue-collar moms and dads, that this is exactly the sort of place where Republicans need to be talking, and they haven't been talking about it, and she's helping lead the way.
I think that we're having a little bit of an elitist conversation in that, you know what, the majority of kids don't get to grow up in two-parent homes, and that's really a much broader conversation, and it's sad, but, you know, this thought that everyone in America is growing up where they have a husband to support them is just not reality.
I know, we've got the data on that. I mean, in most, you know, it's approaching the point where, I mean, you've got a lot of households where the woman is the lead earner.
Yeah, so I think that's why I like what Ivanka is pushing parental leave. I like what Joy had to say about the gig economy, but I would say the gig economy is not just about women. Maybe you have the dad who wants to stay at home, but the reality is, which is a much bigger issue, is that the number of children growing up in single-parent homes, I believe, is greater than married homes at this point. Marriage has become an elite institution for educated and wealthy people, and that is not good for society.
It's absolutely not. It's a huge issue. Joy, I want to come back to you for a quick final word, because I think that's really at the heart of this. But you close us out here.
Well, I think what's really missing from the conversation we're having so far about daycare and paid leave is the fact that it's incontrovertible that young children absolutely need their mother to focus most of their energies on them. So that's something that neither daycare nor paid leave can really provide a child. The child's emotional development, the child's intellectual development, and their sense of security for the rest of their life is really created by having mom focusing on them for their first 3 to 5 years of life. And that is destroyed when we are subsidizing family separation through daycare and other kinds of policies. What we really need to do is focus on strengthening families and families being responsible for their own kids and communicating that message rather than subsidizing family separation. That's only bad for kids, and all the sociological and child development research really emphasizes that. That's been missing from this kind of high-level conversation, pretending that, you know, you can just substitute care for children. That's not possible.
Well, you've certainly put it on the agenda tonight. Enjoy. I'm really looking forward to talking to you more about this and other issues, particularly your view on decentralizing. With this theme tonight on education. You got a great piece on that. Hope to see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
And thanks.